Hey everyone, ready to turn those battlefield skills into boardroom success?
Sounds exciting.
Today we're diving deep into a guide specifically made for veterans who are ready to launch their business dreams.
Oh, cool. What's it called?
It's called the Veteran Entrepreneur Inspiration.
Oh, okay, I've heard of that.
We'll be extracting the most valuable tips and insights.
Awesome. I'm ready to get inspired.
Did you know there are boot camps just for veteran entrepreneurs?
Really? I had no idea.
And that your military experience might be more valuable than you realize when it comes to funding.
That's interesting. Tell me more.
Well, let's bring in our expert to break it all down.
Hey, everyone.
This guide dives deep into the advantages veterans have. It's fascinating how it turns military experience into a secret weapon for entrepreneurs.
Absolutely. It reframes what you might see as just military experience into valuable entrepreneurial skills. It's a real game changer.
Yeah, it's not just about having a business idea.
Right.
It's about the discipline, the strategic thinking. How does the guide suggest actually applying these to building a business?
Well, it starts with recognizing those transferable skills, like leading teams under pressure, managing those big projects, thinking on your feet.
Right, that's all second nature to veterans.
Exactly. They call these skills weapons in the entrepreneur's arsenal, which is such a great way to put it.
Okay, I can see how those skills connect. But what about the business idea itself? Any advice there?
Well, it's not just about passion.
Right, although that's important.
Definitely important.
Mm-hmm.
But the guide really stresses finding a need in the market and then testing your idea.
So kind of like doing recon before a mission?
Exactly. You wouldn't launch a campaign without understanding the landscape, right?
Yeah, it makes sense. But how do you test these ideas?
Well, they suggest using online surveys, focus groups, just to gauge interest.
So it's like gathering intel before you deploy.
Exactly. You need to know your target audience, their needs.
And if your solution actually fits, that's a smart move. Get that feedback early on. But a lot of veterans transition out of service with very specialized skills. How does the guide address that when it comes to finding an idea?
The guide actually encourages veterans to leverage those specialized skills. Think about what you excelled at during your service.
That makes sense.
Were you the person everyone went to fix equipment?
Right.
Maybe a repair business is a perfect fit.
Oh, I like that.
Did you manage complex logistics operations?
Okay.
A supply chain company could be in your future.
Yeah.
The guide highlights how your unique experiences can actually become your unique selling proposition.
Okay, so we've got the skills, we've got the idea. What's next?
Now we need a battle plan.
Ooh, I like it.
And in the business world, that's your business plan.
Okay.
It's where you outline your mission, your target market, your strategy, and your financial projections.
So the business plan. I know it's important, but it can be a beast to tackle. Any tips for making it less daunting?
Well, the guide goes beyond the basic structure of a business plan.
Okay.
It emphasizes the importance of tailoring it to your specific venture.
Right.
For example, it suggests highlighting the social impact,
Okay.
which is something investors really care about.
Social impact, yeah, especially for veterans who are often driven by service. What else does the guide offer for crafting that killer business plan?
Well, it encourages you to think of your business plan as more than just a document to secure funding.
Okay.
It's a roadmap for your whole entrepreneurial journey. The guide highlights emphasizing your military experience, showcasing how your skills and discipline set you apart. It's about convincing investors you're not just another startup.
Okay.
You're a mission-ready leader prepared to execute.
Ooh, I like it. So we've got our battle plan, but launching a business, even with all that prep, can feel overwhelming. I'm guessing the guide dives into resources for veterans.
It does, and it's like opening a treasure chest of support.
Okay, I like it.
There are programs, funding opportunities, mentorship networks. It's really amazing.
All right, this is what I'm talking about. Spill the beans. What kind of resources?
Well, you've got the SBA, the Small Business Administration.
Okay, I've heard of them.
They offer loans, counseling, training programs, all specifically for veterans.
Yeah.
Have you heard of Boots to Business Reboot?
I have, yeah.
It's a great one.
It sounds interesting, but is it really that different from other entrepreneur boot camps out there?
Oh, it is. What's unique about Boots to Business Reboot is that it's actually taught by entrepreneurs who are also veterans.
You okay?
They understand the challenges you face transitioning out of the service and how to apply your skills to a business setting. Plus, they can connect you with mentors who have walked the same path.
Okay, that's definitely a step up from just generic business advice. What about funding?
Yeah.
Are there resources for veterans who maybe don't have a ton of capital?
Absolutely. Beyond traditional loans, the guide highlights the National Veterans Business Fund, which offers microloans and business coaching specifically for veterans.
Oh, wow.
And then there's SCORE the Service Corps of retired executives.
I've heard of them.
They offer free mentoring from seasoned professionals, and a lot of them are veterans themselves.
Wow, so even if you're not ready for a big loan, there's support to get you started.
Absolutely.
This is amazing. There's no way that's all of it, though, right?
Not even close. They even cover Patriot Boot Camp,
Oh.
which is specifically for veterans who want to become franchise owners.
Okay.
It's like they've thought of every path a veteran entrepreneur might take, and they've laid out resources for each one.
So whether you're building from the ground up or buying into a franchise, there's support in place.
Exactly.
This is incredible. But even with all the best resources, you still need a solid team.
Oh, absolutely. And the guide doesn't just gloss over that.
Okay, good.
It dedicates a whole section to building your A team,
I like it.
really focusing on how veterans can create high-performing units, just like in the military.
Okay, so we're not just talking about hiring anyone. We're talking about building a squad that can handle anything.
Exactly.
What should we look for when we're assembling that team?
It goes beyond skills.
Right.
Though, of course, those are important. They emphasize finding people who are passionate about your mission,
Okay. Yeah.
share your values,
Right.
people who are willing to go that extra mile and committed to your vision.
Yeah, that's key.
Yeah.
You need people who believe in what you're building.
Absolutely.
Does the guide get into specifics about finding these ideal team members?
Yeah, they suggest leveraging your networks, veteran organizations, online platforms, really tapping into that talent pool that understands the military mindset.
Okay.
They also highlight veteran-specific hiring resources and online job boards.
So you can connect with people who understand your background.
Exactly.
That's super helpful. But finding the right people is only half the battle. How do you keep them?
The guide really stresses this. They emphasize offering competitive compensation. They recognize veterans are mission-driven, but they also need to provide for their families.
Right. That's something I hadn't thought of.
Yeah.
It makes sense, though.
Yeah,
Attract the best, treat them well. That's how you build a team that'll last.
exactly.
Okay, so you've got the A team assembled. How do we spread the word about this amazing business?
That's where marketing comes in.
Yeah.
And the guide has some great advice for veteran entrepreneurs.
Okay.
It's about tailoring your approach to leverage your strengths and connect with your audience.
Okay. I'm all ears. What kind of advice?
One thing that stands out is their emphasis on storytelling.
Okay.
They encourage veterans to share their personal stories, how their military experience led to their ventures.
People love stories. It builds trust.
Exactly.
Okay. What other tips?
They also suggest highlighting your veteran-owned status in your branding.
Okay.
In today's market, a lot of consumers actively seek out veteran-owned businesses. They want to support you.
Makes sense. It's like having a built-in network of supporters. Any other surprises in the marketing section?
Yeah.
Okay.
They really go deep on user-generated content, like customer testimonials and social media engagement.
Okay.
It's about showcasing those authentic experiences, building trust.
Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah,
User-generated content. Like word of mouth on steroids.
exactly.
Okay, we've got our team, we've got a marketing plan, but now we need to talk funding.
Right.
Funding is key for any startup. What does the guide offer?
They offer a comprehensive breakdown of options tailored for veterans.
Okay, let's hear it. What's the first one?
First up, bootstrapping.
Okay.
Using your savings or contributions from friends and family to get started.
Okay.
Now, it might not be ideal for everyone, but it offers the most control over your business.
Bootstrapping sounds appealing for control, but a lot of veterans might not have extensive savings.
Right. They acknowledge that.
Yeah.
That's why they delve into debt financing, borrowing money from a bank or a lender.
So basically, it's like taking out a loan for your business. Are there specific loans for veterans?
Absolutely. The guide highlights the SBA loan programs.
Okay.
They're designed specifically for veteran-owned businesses.
Okay, yeah.
And they often come with lower interest rates.
Oh, nice.
They'll help you find the right programs, understand the requirements, and put together a compelling application.
Okay, so even if bootstrapping isn't an option, there are loans out there.
Yeah.
What about options that don't involve taking on debt?
They also cover equity financing,
Okay.
selling a portion of your business to investors in exchange for capital.
Okay.
It could be a great way to access funding, especially for those high-growth ventures. They even talk about negotiating with investors.
Oh, negotiation. That's
Yeah.
something veterans are known for.
Right.
Does the guide dive into specific tactics we can use when dealing with investors?
They emphasize the importance of being prepared, understanding your BATNA.
Okay.
That's your best alternative to a negotiated agreement.
Right.
And using your negotiation skills to get those favorable terms.
Okay.
They encourage veterans to think of it like negotiating a strategic alliance,
I like that.
where both you and the investor benefit.
So it's not about being adversarial.
Right.
It's about finding that win-win.
Exactly.
This is great. It feels like we've covered so much already, but I know we're just getting started.
We've only just scratched the surface.
I'm ready for more.
Good. We've talked about the foundation, but now we need to dive into execution.
Okay.
That's where things get really exciting.
Okay.
So next, we'll look at how to apply that strategic military mindset to your business.
Okay. I'm excited to tap into that, so stay tuned because we're about to get into the tactical side of building a successful business.
It's going to be good.
All right, welcome back. Before the break, we were talking about all these incredible resources for veterans
Right.
and how they can use those experiences to really build a successful business.
Yeah.
And one of the most valuable assets is that strategic mindset that's developed in the military.
Absolutely. The guide really emphasizes that, how that strategic thinking can be applied to every single part of your business.
Okay, so more than just going with the flow.
Exactly, yeah.
How do we cultivate that proactive strategic approach?
Well, it all starts with having a clear vision for your company. You know what your goals are, your mission objective, and then it's about doing your homework,
Okay.
just like you would on a mission.
Right.
Conduct that thorough market research, gather the intel on your competitors,
Okay.
identify the needs of your target audience, determine how your business will meet those needs, and of course, create that detailed plan, that roadmap.
Right, the business plan.
Yeah,
Okay, so applying that military rigor to the business world.
right, exactly.
Does the guide offer any specific strategies that are particularly relevant to veterans?
They do. They go in depth on setting SMART goals.
Oh, yeah, SMART goals.
You're probably familiar with those from your training.
Yeah.
It's all about specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound.
Right, breaking those big, ambitious goals down.
Exactly.
Smaller, more manageable steps.
Exactly. So you don't get overwhelmed.
Makes sense. What else?
Well, they emphasize delegation, just like in the military.
Yeah.
A good commander wouldn't try to do everything themselves.
Right.
So you need to build that team, empower them.
Delegate effectively.
Yeah, based on everyone's strengths.
Right.
And, leverage that talent. Trust your team.
Delegation can be tough for some people, though,
Yeah.
especially if you're used to being very hands-on.
Right.
Does the guide offer any tips on how to become a better delegator?
They do. They suggest starting small.
Okay.
Give your team more as they prove themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Emphasize communication, make sure they have the resources and the support.
Okay, so it's about fostering that culture of trust,
Exactly.
which ultimately leads to a more effective team.
Right.
But, even with the best plans, things don't always go the way we want them to.
How does the guide address that?
This is where that military experience really comes in handy.
Right. Yeah.
Because the business world, just like the battlefield, it's unpredictable.
Absolutely.
So you have to be adaptable, adjust those plans based on the situation.
Adaptability is a key skill for any entrepreneur.
Oh, for sure.
But I think veterans are particularly well suited.
Absolutely, yeah.
Can you give me an example of how that might apply to a business challenge?
Sure, imagine you're launching a new product.
Okay.
And your supplier calls you and tells you there's a delay.
Uh-oh.
A civilian entrepreneur might panic,
Yeah.
but a veteran,
Right.
they'd fall back on that experience, assess the situation, figure out another solution,
Right.
communicate effectively.
That's a great example.
Yeah.
It really highlights how those military skills just translate perfectly. Okay, so we've got that strategic mindset.
Right.
We're setting SMART goals.
Yeah.
We're delegating effectively. We're staying flexible.
What else?
Okay, now let's talk money.
Ooh, yes.
Let's talk financing those ventures.
Yeah.
And the guide really dives into some unique opportunities for veterans.
Okay, this is where it gets interesting. I know there are resources out there, but sometimes it feels impossible to navigate.
I know.
What does the guide suggest?
Well, first, they go deeper into those SBA loan programs.
Okay.
They emphasize that these loans aren't just about getting the money.
Right.
They often come with mentorship and guidance from experienced people.
Oh, that's a huge bonus.
Yeah.
It's like getting funding and a built-in support system all at once.
Exactly, yeah.
What other options are there?
Well, they highlight veteran business grants,
Ooh, grants.
which is essentially free money.
Free money, that's my favorite kind. But what's the catch?
Well, obviously, there's criteria and an application process.
Oh, okay, right.
But the guide breaks it down and helps make it less daunting. They really encourage you to do your research.
Okay.
Make sure your business aligns with the grant's mission and that your application really highlights your unique value.
So it's not just about getting lucky. It's about being strategic
Exactly.
and presenting a strong case.
Yes.
Okay, what else?
Well, they also talk about crowdfunding platforms,
Okay.
which are great for tapping into a large pool of investors,
Mm-hmm.
especially if your business has that consumer appeal. They also cover angel investors,
Okay, the sharks.
right? And venture capitalists.
Yeah, those are a little intimidating.
I know.
What advice do they give for navigating that?
They offer practical advice for crafting your pitch,
Okay.
highlighting your value, your market, and the expertise of your team.
Yeah,
And they really encourage you to embrace your military background.
that's a good point. Investors are looking for people who can handle pressure,
Right.
which is definitely something veterans are good at. Do they give specific examples of how to do that?
They suggest drawing parallels between your accomplishments and the challenges of entrepreneurship.
Okay.
So, for example, if you led a complex logistics operation, you can highlight how those skills apply to managing supply chains or making those critical decisions.
That's a good way to connect the dots for people who may not be familiar with that.
Right.
Okay, so we've got a strategic mindset.
Yeah.
We've got some funding strategies. What's next?
It's time to master the art of the deal.
Ooh, I like that.
No matter what stage you're at,
Mm.
securing funding, negotiating with suppliers, whatever,
Yeah.
negotiation is key.
Yeah, we touched on negotiation a bit, but I'm excited to go deeper.
Me too.
Does the guide offer advice for veterans who are new to this world?
Absolutely. And they actually tie it back to that military experience.
Oh, I like
They
it.
highlight the skills you've already developed.
Mm,
Strategic thinking, communication, staying calm,
right.
it all translates.
So it's not just about being tough, it's about applying those military principles.
Exactly.
Okay, what are some key takeaways?
They start with preparation. Just like you wouldn't go into battle without a plan, you can't negotiate without doing your homework.
Mm.
Research the other party, understand their needs. It's like gathering intel.
Preparation is key,
Yeah.
but a lot of people, even veterans, might still feel intimidated by negotiation.
Right.
What do we do about that?
Well, they emphasize the importance of your BTNA, your best alternative to a negotiated agreement.
Right, your backup plan.
Exactly. Yeah. It gives you that confidence.
Okay, so BTNA is our safety net.
Yeah.
If we know we have other options, we're not going to make concessions we'll regret later.
Right.
Do they give examples of how we can develop a strong BTNA?
They do. They suggest brainstorming different scenarios.
Okay,
So, for example, if you're negotiating with a supplier,
right.
explore other potential suppliers.
Okay,
If you're seeking funding, consider other funding sources.
got it. So always have a backup plan.
Yeah.
What other insights do they offer?
Well, they talk about the importance of building rapport,
Mm.
establishing that connection, finding common ground, demonstrating empathy. It's not a battle, it's collaborative.
Right, win-win.
Exactly.
What are some practical tips for building rapport?
Well, they suggest active listening.
Oh, yeah, that's crucial.
Pay attention, both verbally and non-verbally,
Mm-hmm.
ask questions, summarize their points, show that genuine interest.
Okay, so really make them feel heard.
Yeah.
Okay. Does the guide have other communication tips that can help?
Oh, yeah. They highlight clear and concise communication,
Okay.
which I'm sure you're familiar with.
Absolutely.
Be articulate, be respectful, but also firm. Avoid jargon and get your point across.
So use those communication skills you've learned
Yes.
to advocate for yourself.
Hmm.
What about body language?
Oh, they definitely talk about that. It's about projecting confidence.
Okay.
Maintain eye contact, stand tall, avoid fidgeting.
It's all about that demeanor
Yeah.
that we associate with, like, military leaders.
Exactly.
Okay, so those subtle cues really matter.
Yeah.
Are there any other tactics?
They dive into what's called the anchoring technique.
Anchoring. Yeah, we talked about that briefly.
Right. And it's setting that initial reference point.
Okay.
If you make the first offer, you're setting the tone.
Okay, so if I want to sell something for $100, I might start by asking for like $120.
Exactly. It gives you some wiggle room. And the guy gives a great example with a veteran starting a construction company.
Okay,
They know their competitors are going to bid around $50,000,
right.
but they anchor their bid at $60,000.
Okay.
So even if they negotiate down, they're still likely to secure a better price.
Oh, that's smart.
Yeah.
What other tactics are there?
They talk about the yes, but technique.
Yes, but.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's acknowledging their point, but still introducing your own counteroffer.
Okay, so finding a compromise.
Exactly. Like imagine you're negotiating a contract and they want a faster turnaround than you're comfortable with. You could say, yes, I understand the urgency, but to deliver the best work, we need to stick to our timeline. However, we can explore other options.
Okay, so finding that middle ground.
Yeah.
What else?
Okay, this one's a little surprising, but it's the power of silence.
Silence.
Yeah, just pausing after they make an offer.
Yeah.
It can be really powerful.
So just let it hang there for a minute.
Exactly.
Okay.
It might make them rethink their position.
It kind of reminds me of those moments in the military, when a leader would pause before giving orders.
Oh, yeah.
That silence was powerful.
It really is. And those subtle tactics really work.
Okay, I'm ready to negotiate. But negotiation isn't just about tactics.
You're right.
It's also about mindset.
Exactly, yeah. And they really stress that. Approach negotiation with confidence, but not arrogance.
Okay.
Be assertive but respectful. It's not a battle. It's collaborative.
Find that win-win.
Exactly.
And be adaptable.
Oh, always.
Just like on the battlefield, things can change. You have to adjust your strategy and never give up.
Oh, never.
That resilience that we've developed is crucial.
Absolutely. And remember, this is just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to negotiation. There's so much more in the guide.
Oh, I know. I'm already planning to reread that section.
Good.
We've talked about strategic thinking, negotiating skills, securing funding, but there's another thing that the guide highlights.
Oh, yeah?
And it's something that I think a lot of veterans are passionate about.
Okay, what is it?
Social impact.
Yes. It's a whole section in the guide.
Building a business that doesn't just thrive, but also makes a difference.
Exactly. Yeah.
And I think for a lot of veterans, that's really important.
It is.
What strategies does the guide offer?
Well, they start by encouraging you to find a cause you connect with.
Okay.
Something that aligns with your business. And then they get into different approaches.
Okay.
Cause-related marketing, volunteer programs, even things like, responsible sourcing.
So it's about making choices that reflect your values in every aspect of your business.
Exactly, yeah.
And it's not just about doing good. It's about building a business that you truly believe in,
I agree.
that contributes to a better world.
Absolutely, yeah.
And the guide highlights how that can benefit your business, right?
Oh, yeah, definitely. It can attract customers, enhance your brand's reputation, even boost morale.
It's like a win-win for everyone.
It really is.
Okay, but before we move on, I do have a question.
Yeah.
The guide talks about the strengths and the opportunities.
Right.
But are there specific challenges that veterans might face?
That's a great question. And the guide actually does address those.
Okay.
One of the big ones is that transition from the military to the civilian world.
Yeah, that makes sense. The military is very structured.
Absolutely.
And the business world is, well, it's different.
It is. It's a lot more fluid.
What's the advice for navigating that?
Well, they suggest seeking out mentors, networking opportunities, specifically with other veteran business owners.
Okay, so find your tribe.
Exactly. Find those people who get it. And they also recommend training
Okay.
to help you translate your skills, bridge that gap.
Okay, that's helpful. What other challenges do they talk about?
Another big one is access to capital.
Right, yeah.
Veterans might not have that same credit history or the network of investors.
So what's the solution?
They highlight exploring all the funding options,
Okay.
from SBA loans and grants to crowdfunding, angel investors,
Yeah.
and they emphasize crafting that compelling business plan.
Okay, so really showcasing why your business is worth investing in.
Exactly. And of course, seeking out mentors,
Yeah.
people who can guide you,
Yeah.
connect you with those investors.
That's great advice. Anything else?
One last thing they touch on is the emotional toll.
Oh, yeah.
Starting a business, it can be really stressful.
It really can.
And, veterans carry the weight of their service. So the guide really encourages prioritizing mental health,
Okay, yeah.
seeking out counseling, support groups, if needed.
Right. So it's recognizing that your mental health is just as important as your business's success.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we've talked about the strengths and the challenges. What's the overall message here?
The message is that veteran entrepreneurship, it's a journey with its ups and downs. It's not easy.
It's not easy.
But it is rewarding.
Absolutely.
And veterans have everything they need to succeed.
Yeah, they really do.
And they have the support.
That's great.
Yeah.
So this guide, it really speaks to that potential.
Absolutely.
Okay, well, this has been so insightful. I feel like I've learned so much. But before we wrap up,
Yeah.
I want to touch on legacy.
Oh, legacy, yeah.
The guide really emphasizes building a legacy that goes beyond just the financial success.
Right.
What kind of legacy do you hope to build with your business?
That's a great question. For me, it's about supporting veterans and their families,
Mm,
creating a business that provides jobs, offers services that meet their unique needs, and gives back to the community.
that's amazing. And before we go any further, we need to dive into one more crucial skill:
Oh, yeah.
negotiation.
Negotiation.
We've touched on it a little bit, but I think it deserves more attention.
I agree.
So let's unlock those skills that can help secure the best deals.
Let's do it.
Welcome back. We're diving deeper into a crucial skill for success as an entrepreneur:
Right.
negotiation.
Mm-hmm.
And we're not just talking about haggling over prices here.
Yeah.
We're talking about using your military experience to really secure the best deals for your business.
Absolutely.
You know, I've always kind of thought of negotiation as this high-stakes game
Mm-hmm.
where you have to be ruthless to get what you want.
Right.
But this guide has a different perspective,
Yeah, it does.
doesn't it? It
Mhm.
emphasizes collaboration and finding solutions that work for everyone.
Absolutely. It's not about winning or losing.
Right.
It's about creating those agreements where everyone benefits.
Okay. I like that approach. It takes some of the pressure off.
Yeah.
You know, knowing that you're not trying to outsmart the other person,
Right.
but actually just find common ground.
Exactly.
So where do we start?
Well,
What are the foundational principles of good negotiation?
they highlight three key things:
Mm-hmm.
preparation, building rapport, and understanding your BATNA,
Okay.
your best alternative to a negotiated agreement.
We've talked about the preparation and BETNA.
We have.
So let's focus on rapport for a minute.
Okay.
I can see how that's essential in any interaction,
Mm-hmm.
but especially in negotiation.
Right.
Does the guide offer specific advice on how to do that?
They really emphasize active listening as the starting point.
Okay.
You know, pay attention to what the other person is saying,
Mhm.
verbally and non-verbally.
Right.
Ask clarifying questions.
Mm-hmm.
Summarize their points to make sure you understand,
Okay.
and really show that genuine interest in what they have to say. It can really go a long way.
It's about making them feel heard and understood,
Exactly.
which can be more effective than jumping in with your own arguments right away.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. And I think this is where your military experience can be so valuable.
Mm-hmm.
Think about the importance of communication in the service.
Oh, yeah.
That same principle applies to negotiation. You know, be articulate, be respectful, but be firm.
Yes.
Okay, so we've laid the groundwork with preparation,
Mm-hmm.
rapport, and our BTNA.
Right.
Now let's talk tactics.
Okay.
What are some things that veterans can use to their advantage?
Well, they outline several tactics, but one that really stands out is the anchoring technique.
Anchoring.
Mm-hmm.
We touched on that earlier.
We did.
Can you remind me how that works?
It's basically about setting the initial reference point for the negotiation.
Okay.
So if you're the one who makes the first offer,
Mm-hmm.
you're essentially anchoring the conversation around that number.
Right. Okay, so if I'm selling something for $100, I might start by asking for $120.
Exactly. You give yourself some wiggle room.
Right.
And the guide actually gives a great example of how this could play out.
Okay.
Say you're a veteran who starts a construction company.
Mm-hmm.
You're bidding on a project,
Right.
and you know your competitors are going to be around $50,000.
Okay.
By anchoring your bid at $60,000,
Okay.
you're setting a higher starting point,
Yeah.
and even if you negotiate down a bit,
Mm-hmm.
you're more likely to get a better price.
Oh, that's clever.
Yeah.
Okay, so combine that with good preparation and a strong BTNA,
Right.
and you're in a good position.
Exactly.
What other strategies are there?
They also talk about what's called the yes but technique.
Yes, but.
Yeah, it's a way to acknowledge what the other person is saying
Mm-hmm.
while still introducing your counteroffer.
Okay, so you're not conceding completely.
Right. You're finding a middle ground.
Okay.
So, for example,
Mm-hmm.
imagine you're negotiating a contract
Yep.
and the client wants a really fast turnaround time,
Mhm.
faster than you're comfortable with.
Right.
You could say, yes, I understand the urgency of the project, but to make sure we deliver high quality work, we need to stick to our timeline.
Okay.
However, we can explore bringing in additional resources to speed things up.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah,
So you're finding that middle ground,
exactly.
but also advocating for what you need. What other tactics are there?
This one is a little surprising,
Okay.
but it's the power of silence.
Silence.
Yeah, just pausing for a bit after they make an offer
Okay.
can be very powerful.
So just let it hang in the air.
Yes, create a little tension.
Okay.
It might make them rethink their position
Hmm.
or even offer a concession.
It kind of reminds me of those moments in the military where a leader would pause,
Hmm.
before giving orders.
Yeah,
The silence was powerful.
it really was.
Okay, so those seemingly small things can have a big impact.
Mhm.
Okay, I'm feeling like a master negotiator already. But it's not just about the tactics.
No,
It's also about the mindset.
it really is. And the guide emphasizes that.
Right.
Approach to negotiation with confidence,
Mm-hmm.
but not arrogance.
Okay.
Be assertive,
Mm-hmm.
but also respectful.
Right. It's about finding a solution that works for everyone
Exactly.
and being adaptable.
Oh, absolutely.
Things can change so quickly.
They can't.
Just like on the battlefield,
Mm-hmm.
you got to be ready to adjust your strategy.
You do.
And, never give up. Even
Yeah.
when things get tough, that resilience is key.
It is.
Okay, so we've got a lot of great advice here,
We do.
but I know this is just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to negotiation.
Oh, yeah. There's a whole chapter in the guide dedicated to it.
I'm going to have to reread that.
Good.
This has been such an amazing deep dive into the world of veteran entrepreneurship.
It really has.
We've covered so much.
Yeah, we talked about identifying your skills,
Hmm.
validating your business idea.
Crafting a business plan,
Mm-hmm.
securing that funding, building a team,
Mm-hmm.
marketing your business,
Right.
executing your vision,
Mhm.
and mastering negotiation.
It's a lot.
It's a lot, but it's so valuable.
It is.
And it all comes back to that idea that veterans have the skills and the experience
They do.
to be incredible entrepreneurs.
Absolutely.
This guide really is a testament to that potential.
It is.
It's inspiring and it's practical.
Hmm.
So if this has sparked your entrepreneurial fire,
Mm-hmm.
we encourage you to check out the source material,
Yes.
the Veteran Entrepreneur Inspiration.
Good one.
You have everything you need
You do.
to build a business that thrives and makes a positive impact.
Go for it.
This is The Deep Dive signing off.